The Mildred Gaddis Show is now live on 105.9 KISS.
Good morning, Detroit, and welcome to the Mildred Gaddis Show. What a beautiful Sunday morning. We've got cloudy skies out there. Out there. I hope I said out there. Didn't I say out there? Out there. Okay. We're expecting rain this afternoon. Right now in the city, it's 36 degrees. At 9 o'clock, we're expecting to reach a warm 39. And later today, 56 degrees is in the forecast for Sunday's high. Tonight's low in the 40s. Tomorrow, 56 Monday with periods of rain Monday morning as well as Monday afternoon. 313-568-1059 is our number here on the Mildred Gaddis Show. Want to say good morning, kicking it off already this morning. Our Facebook Live family, including Ponce Clay, the very first one to log on Facebook Live this morning. He says it's a brand new day. You bet it is, my friend. Walter Haley, good morning to you. And Norbert Swilly, appreciate you joining us this morning. I've got to tell you, my heart is pretty heavy. I am happy to share with you that we have a special this morning on the late, great Colin Powell. With all of his accomplishments, he wanted to be referred to as the General. And I hope you'll appreciate this. This information shares a lot that most people just did not know. But it talk about a life, an incredible journey, a man who was an average student. In fact, he was not a good student. So while you're beating up on your students who are making C's, be very careful there because, they tend to be the people who go out into the world and become the greatest high achievers. And Harvard Law did a study on that to validate that. Dead at age 84. Then we're going to talk with Mr. Ellis Liddell. And he's going to share with us what it is in the Biden's infrastructure bill and what it means to us. So you want to find out what it means. You're going to be joining us after we do our special to Mr. Colin Powell. And local artist Mr. Mike Sanders has a tribute song to the Temptations. Oh, how I love those songs. That's the title of the new song. We're going to check in with him and give you a tease in terms of what that song is like. But first of all, we're going to kick it off with this story about this incredible man with an incredible journey. We're calling it the American Dream.
Colin Powell is living the American dream. His vantage point of the world around him encompasses from his early beginnings in Harlem to the lofty heights of advising presidents. In a time when Americans have become disenchanted with politicians and broken campaign promises, Colin Powell signifies a possible new beginning in the political arena. He has become the American hope. To understand Powell's strong feelings of honor and commitment, we must acknowledge Thomas Jefferson when he wrote, "There is a debt of service due from every man to his country, proportioned to the bounties which nature and fortune have measured to him." In his autobiography, My American Journey, Powell refers to this quote as an explanation as to why he has lived a life of public service. As one who has received so much from his country, I feel that debt heavily, and I can never be entirely free of it. My responsibility, our responsibility as lucky Americans, is to try to give back to this country as much as it has given to us, as we continue our American journey together.
An urgent message. To anyone with type 2 diabetes or pre-diabetes, this discovery
Colin Luther Powell was born on April 5, 1937 in Harlem. His parents, Luther and Maud Ariel, who was known as Ari, had immigrated from Jamaica before Colin's birth. They had already a daughter, Marilyn, who was 5.5 years older than Colin. Luther Powell was definitely the patriarch of the Powell family. Colin described his parents as somewhat opposite in nature. Luther Powell may be small, maybe unimposing in appearance, maybe somewhat comical, was nevertheless the ringmaster of this family circle. His father was the eternal optimist, and his mother was the perennial worrier. His father worked his way up in the garment district in New York and became a foreman in the shipping department of a women's clothing manufacturer. His mother also worked in the garment district as a seamstress. The family eventually left Harlem, and they moved to a tenement in South Bronx in 1943 when Colin was 6. They lived on Kelly Street, which was an ethnically mixed community of Jews, Italians, Poles, Greeks, Puerto Ricans, and blacks. Colin displayed no clear talents as a youngster. His academic career lacked in luster. In 1950, I entered Morris High School. Instead of turning left when I went out of the house, I turned right for a few blocks. Marilyn had gone to the elite Walton High School, and at my parents' prompting, I tried to get into Stuyvesant High, another prestigious school. I still have the report card with the guidance counselor's decision. We advise against it. Morris High, on the other hand, was like Robert Frost's definition of home, the place where when you show up, they have to let you in. Powell described himself as directionless.
I had a very happy childhood, and I was encompassed by this warm family. But by the time I got into high school, and as I ended my high school period and started into college, I still wasn't heading anywhere. I hadn't proven to be a terribly good athlete. I wasn't one of the leaders on the block. I wasn't quite sure what I was going to college for, other than it was expected of me. And my first several months in college made it even less clear why I was there. And so I was still drifting. I had not really excelled at anything, even though I had all this advantage of family. And then suddenly I saw these young men in uniform. I found ROTC, I joined ROTC, and the uniform lifted me out of that sort of bland existence that I had, even with the nurturing family, and I discovered I was good at it. And so that became my route up.
It wasn't until his first semester at the City College of New York that he finally found his calling. He enrolled in ROTC and joined the Pershing Rifles, a military society which was similar to a fraternity. He was an average student, but earned A's in his ROTC classes. When he graduated from college in 1958, Powell went to Fort Benning in Georgia for basic training. It was one of his first direct experiences with racism. Racism was still relatively new to me, and I had to find a way to cope psychologically. I began by identifying my priorities. I wanted, above all, to succeed at my Army career. I did not intend to give way to self-destructive rage, no matter how provoked. If people in the South insisted on living by crazy rules, then I would play the hand dealt for now. If I was to be confined to one end of the playing field, then I was going to be a star on that part of the field. Nothing that happened off post, none of the indignities, none of the injustices was going to inhibit my performance. I was not going to let myself become emotionally crippled because I could not play on the whole field. I did not feel inferior, and I was not going to let anybody make me feel I was. I was not going to allow someone else's feelings about me become my feelings about myself. Racism was not just a black problem, it was America's problem. And until the country solved it, I was not going to let bigotry make me a victim instead of a full human being. I occasionally felt hurt. I felt anger. But most of all, I felt challenged. I'll show you. Powell attended Ranger School, where he received airborne training. He parachuted out of planes and rappelled off sides of mountains. His first assignment was with the 3rd Armored Division in West Germany. He arrived at Gelnhausen, a town 25 miles east of Frankfurt. As second lieutenant, he was assigned as a platoon leader to Company B, 2nd Armored Rifle Battalion, 48th Infantry. During the summer of 1961, Powell made the decision to make a career out of the military. He realized that he didn't have many options outside of the military. Powell had left Germany by this time and was stationed in Massachusetts. He saw firsthand the difficulties of his friends and family who were trying to make a living, struggling with an economy which was in the midst of a recession. In November of 1961, Colin Powell went on his one and only blind date. He had been asked to double date with his military roommate, Michael Henningberg. His girlfriend's roommate was Alma Johnson. She was the daughter of a high school principal from Birmingham, Alabama. Alma had a degree in audiology and worked with the hearing impaired. In August of 1962, Powell received his orders to go to Vietnam. By this time, Alma and Colin had been dating 18 months, and Alma was less than enthusiastic about their forthcoming separation. Later that night, Colin realized that he had to make a decision before he left for the war. He had already experienced the breakup of another relationship because it was too difficult to weather the separation when he was in Germany. In his memoirs, he recalls, "That night, I lay in my bunk taking emotional inventory of the relationship. Alma Johnson was beautiful, intelligent, refined, and fun to be with, and all too rare in a romance. She was my friend. She came from a fine family, got along with my circle of friends, and was even a great cook. I knew that she loved me, and I loved her. My folks loved her too. What was I waiting for? Alma had everything I would ever want in a wife. I was a jerk for not acting before she got away. This nonsense that if the Army wanted you to have a wife, it would have issued you one, had to go. I could barely wait to drive back to Boston the next day and ask her to marry me. Thank God she said yes." They were married 2 weeks later on August 25th, 1962 in Birmingham, Alabama. A month after they were married, the couple traveled to Fort Bragg, North Carolina, where he was enrolled as a military assistance training advisor. Soon Alma was pregnant with their first child, and on December 23rd, Colin Powell left to begin his tour of duty in Vietnam and arrived in Saigon on Christmas morning. Colin Powell would serve 2 tours of duty in Vietnam.
So according to
The Mildred Gaddis Show celebrates the life and legacy of General Colin Powell.
The following is a paid political announcement.
Hello, this is Pastor Nicholas Hood III, former member of the Detroit City Council, to encourage you to cast one of your votes for an at-large position on the council for Mary Waters. I know Mary Waters, and I support her in her bid to be elected to the Detroit City Council. I've known her for over 40 years. Mary Waters served 6 years representing Detroit in the Michigan State House of Representatives. She is informed, a good listener, and has a heart for the people and city of Detroit. Mary Waters is a breast cancer survivor and is sensitive to the challenges that women and men face. This is a critical stage in the redevelopment of Detroit, and we need good, clear-headed, strong people to represent the city on the council. Again, this is Pastor Nick Hood, and I ask you to cast one of your votes for at-large city council for Mary Waters.
paid for by Friends of Mary Waters.
4,000 Detroit residents have reduced or eliminated their property
Hey! Come on, put your hands together. It's okay to dance. Come on, say.
We worship you, Almighty God. We worship you forever and ever. We worship you, Almighty God. Amen, amen, amen. When we are weak, you give us strength. You give us strength forever and ever. When we are weak, you give us strength. Amen, amen, amen.
We say amen.
Amen, amen, amen.
And it is so.
Amen, amen, amen.
Amen.
Amen, amen, amen.
Yeah.
Amen, amen, amen. You bring us peace.
You bring us peace.
Almighty God, you bring us peace.
Forever.
Forever and ever, you bring us peace.
Almighty God.
Almighty God.
Amen.
Amen, amen, amen.
Yeah.
You sent your one and only Son to lift us up to heaven, to heaven. You sent your one and only Son.
Amen.
Amen, amen, amen. Power, power, glory, glory. Praise the Lord, praise the Lord. Blessings, blessings, mercy, mercy. Praise the Lord.
Come on, you gotta praise the Lord.
We worship you, Almighty God.
Worship you.
We worship you forever and ever. We worship you,
Almighty God.
Almighty God. Amen, amen, amen. You sent your one
One and
and
only
only Son to lift us up
to heaven.
to heaven, to heaven. You sent your one
Your one and only
and
Son.
only Son.
Amen.
Amen, amen, amen. Amen, amen, amen. Amen, amen, amen.
And it is so.
Amen, amen, amen. Amen, amen, amen. Amen, amen, amen.
And now, back to the Mildred Gaddis Show on 105.9 KISS.
Welcome back to the Mildred Gaddis Show. We are happy to have you join us on this Sunday morning. He was an American statesman, diplomat, four-star general. He served as this country's 65th United States Secretary of State. He was the first Black American Secretary of State. And on Monday, General Colin Powell passed away at age 84.
Saigon on Christmas morning. Colin Powell would serve 2 tours of duty in Vietnam. Powell had been promoted to captain and served as advisor to the 400-man 2nd Battalion, 3rd Infantry Regiment, 1st Division. His battalion served in conjunction with the Army of the Republic of Vietnam. On February 7th, they began their march. The physical demands on the men went beyond anything they had been prepared for. We moved in clouds of insects. The trails we followed had been sown by the VC with snares and punji spikes, bamboo stakes concealed in a hole, the tip poisoned with buffalo dung. The first casualty I witnessed was a soldier who stepped onto a punji spike. For all the hardship, I was still excited to be on the trail, testing my endurance, feeling especially alive as strength and fatigue flowed alternately through my limbs. Powell was in a Shaw Valley when he received the news that his son Michael was born. While on patrol close to the Laotian border, he was wading through a rice paddy when he stepped on a booby trap which had a sharpened punji stick in the middle of it. Powell was sent to a hospital at headquarters in Hue. He returned to the front a few weeks later. Powell received the Purple Heart. After his injury, he was reassigned as commander of the Hue Citadel Airfield. Although Powell did not have experience as a pilot, he was responsible for the logistical handling of small aircraft. On November 1st, he returned to Saigon. He had completed his tour of duty, and he was headed back home. Vietnam had not yet captured the attention of Americans at home. Compared to the 252,000 troops stationed in Europe, Vietnam only had approximately 16,300. What had the states polarized was the civil rights movement. Alma Powell had decided to stay in Birmingham while Colin was overseas. Martin Luther King had referred to Birmingham as the most thoroughly segregated city in the United States. While leading a protest march in Birmingham, Martin Luther King was arrested. President Kennedy was forced to call in the Alabama National Guard to make sure the public schools became integrated. Although Powell was not there to witness the events firsthand, he later told the Washington Post, "I was in Vietnam while my father-in-law was guarding the house with a shotgun." Powell followed closely the growing momentum of the movement. He saw the news accounts of Dr. King's march on Washington, D.C. on August 28, 1963, where 250,000 people demanded equal treatment. When Powell returned to the United States, he was stationed at Fort Benning in Georgia for the next 3.5 years. It was during this time that their second child, a daughter named Linda, was born. In an interview with Ebony magazine, Powell told of his experience of attempting to be served in a restaurant. The waitress, a nice lady, asked him if he was an African student. "No," Powell answered. "A Puerto Rican?" "No, you're Negro," she said. "That's right." "Well, I can't bring out a hamburger. You'll have to go to the back door, where blacks traditionally came in to place their orders." "I wasn't even trying to do a sit-in," Powell said. "All I wanted was a hamburger." 5 months later, after the Civil Rights Bill of 1964 had been enacted, forbidding, among other things, segregation in places of public accommodation, I went back to the restaurant and got my hamburger.
These are warning signs that
You're listening to The Mildred Gaddis Show.
Detroit. Mildred Gaddis wants to hear from you. Let your voice be heard on The Mildred Gaddis Show.
I've been here 30 plus years. There's always been a mayoral debate.
We need one. The streets are talking, and we want you to be a part of the conversation. Sundays from 8 till 10 a.m. with the queen of Detroit Talk Radio, Mildred Gaddis.
I'm Mildred Gaddis, and I'll see you on the radio.
Only on 105.9 KISS FM.
Lady asked him if he was an African student. "No," Powell answered. "A Puerto Rican?" "No, you're Negro," she said. "That's right." "Well, I can't bring out a hamburger. You'll have to go to the back door, where blacks traditionally came in to place their orders." "I wasn't even trying to do a sit-in," Powell said. "All I wanted was a hamburger." 5 months later, after the Civil Rights Bill of 1964 had been enacted, forbidding, among other things, segregation in places of public accommodation, I went back to the restaurant and got my hamburger. While at Fort Benning, he became a test officer with the U.S. Army Infantry Board. The board was responsible for testing any weapons and supplies used by the infantry. Powell served from November of 1963 to June of 1964, and from May of 1965 until February of 1966. In between his assignments, he enrolled in the Infantry Officers Advance Course, which was necessary if Powell were to continue to be promoted. His classmates would later become prestigious military men in their own right. Powell would later become chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. General Howard Graves would become commandant at West Point, and Thomas Griffin would become chief of staff of the Allied forces of Southern Europe. He continued his training in August of 1967 at the U.S. Army Command and General Staff College at Fort Leavenworth, Kansas. Powell had clearly made a name for himself as a soldier with a tremendous amount of potential. Out of a class of 1,244, he graduated second. After completing the training, he was back in Vietnam. By the time Powell returned to Vietnam, there were 500,000 American troops stationed there. Over 50,000 of them were African American. They accounted for 23% of all combat deaths. Colin Powell reached his assignment at Duc Pho on July 1968. His new home was with the 23rd Infantry Division, which was referred to as the Americal. He was an executive officer of the 3rd Battalion, 1st Infantry, 11th Infantry Brigade. Their headquarters was in Chu Lai, located on the northern coastal plain. Duc Pho was a short distance away. Powell, in his memoirs, described Duc Pho in the following way. Life at Duc Pho took crazy pendulum swings from the trite to the heartbreaking. One afternoon, I was getting Coke and beer helicoptered out to the fire bases, a daily priority the exec dared not miss. When Colonel Lauder sent word that he had run into a stiff fight at Firebase Liz and needed help, I ordered up a Slick, a bare-bones UH-1 helicopter. No seats, just space and a couple of door guns. Had it loaded with 5.56 millimeter rifle and 7.62 millimeter machine gun ammo and headed out over the treetops. We landed at Liz near dusk and quickly unloaded. A grim-faced Lauder told me to take back 9 of our casualties. The vulnerability of a helicopter on the ground left little time for niceties. The 9 KHAs killed by hostile action, the Army's replacement term for KIA killed in action, were rolled into ponchos and loaded onto the Slick. As we took off in the half-light, I slumped to the floor, facing 9 recently healthy young American boys, now stacked like cordwood. Things changed dramatically after Powell was written about in the Army Times. The article told of his training and academic successes. The story was read by Major General Charles M. Gaddis, commander of the Americal Division. He immediately told his staff, "I've got the number 2 Leavenworth graduate in my division, and he's stuck out in the boonies as a battalion exec. Bring him up here. I want him as my plans officer." Powell was transferred to Chu Lai, and little did the commander know that this man would end up saving his life. Powell, Commander Gaddis, and members of his staff were on a helicopter mission in the jungle when the pilot attempted to land in a small clearing. The helicopter's rotor blade struck a tree, and the helicopter crashed. Powell recalled, "Since I was sitting outboard, I could see how little clearance we had, about 2 feet at each end of the blade. I began to shout, 'Pull out!' But it was too late. I watched the pilot struggling against a treacherous backdraft created by the trees, and then whack! At a height of about 3 stories, the blade struck a tree trunk. 1 minute we were flying, and the next we were dead weight, as the main rotor blades went instantly from 324 RPM to 0. Powell evacuated the aircraft and quickly realized that except for the helicopter's gunner, everyone had remained on board. Once inside the smoke-filled helicopter, he located General Gaddis. He pulled him from the wreckage and dragged him to safety. Powell assisted in pulling out the rest of the crew. Powell suffered a broken ankle while the general had a broken shoulder. Powell was recognized with the Soldier's Medal, which is earned for heroic action. By 1969, Powell was halfway through his tour of duty. The ranks of enlisted men had inflated to 543,400 men, and the United States was still not making any real gains in ending the war. Atrocities like the one at My Lai, where over 300 people were killed, widened the chasm between the hawks who supported the war and the doves who opposed it. Demonstrators had taken to the streets, and great pressure was placed on the Nixon administration to end the war.
If you wear glasses or contacts,
Detroit seniors, get a $50 reduction on your monthly internet service. AARP has teamed with the city, Henry Ford Health Systems, churches, Detroit Area Agency on Aging, and others. 5,000 applications are available. Reconnect after the pandemic with medical providers, family, and community. Apply online at www.getemergencybroadband.org or call 313-214-7618.
Tap dancing is my way.
Compelling talk you can count on. The Mildred Gaddis Show is back on 105.9 KISS.
It's 36 degrees, still 36 degrees in the city of Detroit. And this morning on the Mildred Gaddis Show, we are honoring the life and legacy of the great Colin Powell. As you listen to the story, this incredible journey, it reminds us that your gifts will make a place for you in the world. We certainly want to thank Juliet Funches, Karen Winston, the queen from the east side, Miss Brenda Butler, who says it's a great tribute to our Nubian king, Joy Canty. Joy certainly says she wants Colin Powell to rest in power. Ruby Riley, Yvonne Cash, Miss UAW, Joe Fuller, Brenda Nimmocks, Paula Brown. We appreciate all of you hanging out with us this morning here on the Mildred Gaddis Show. As you listen, those of you who have joined us via Facebook Live, we certainly ask you to like and share the show this morning.
Powell summed up the war in Vietnam eloquently. War should not be the politics of last resort. And when we go to war, we should have a purpose that our people understand and support. We should mobilize the country's resources to fulfill that mission and then go in to win. In Vietnam, we entered into a half-hearted half-war, with much of the nation opposed or indifferent, while a small fraction carried the burden. Powell applied to the Army's graduate school program. He placed well on the entrance exams and was accepted to George Washington University in Washington, D.C. Colin entered the School of Government and Business Administration and would earn an MBA upon completion of the coursework. He left Vietnam on July 20th, 1969. He would enter graduate school 2 months later. It had been a long year fighting the Viet Cong. He would spend practically the next 5 years in Washington. He completed his graduate work in July 1971 and had been promoted to lieutenant colonel. He became an operations research analyst in the office of the Assistant Vice Chief of Staff of the Army. At the age of 35 in 1972, Powell had been selected as one of the 17 military personnel to serve as a White House Fellow for 1 year. He was assigned to the Office of Management and Budget, which was headed by Caspar Weinberger. Powell described the OMB, as it was referred to as one of the least understood yet most powerful federal agencies in Washington. In the early part of 1973, Powell had been approached on whether or not he was interested to be a White House Fellow for a second year. The Watergate hearings had begun, and Powell decided that he wanted to return to active Army life. It was during this time that Alma and Colin's family grew to 5, with the arrival of their second daughter, Anna Marie. It was the first time that Colin had enough free time to spend with his wife and 3 children. Powell was sent to Korea, where he became the commander of the 1st Battalion, 32nd Infantry, 2nd Infantry Division of the 8th Army. The unit had many internal problems. There was a great deal of racial tension between blacks and whites, and there was significant drug usage among the soldiers. The commanding officer was Major General Henry E. the Gunfighter Emerson. He arrived a few months before Powell. Emerson was very fond of me, Powell recalled, and he was forever using me for one purpose or another. I wasn't anywhere near as good as he claims I was, but we were always great friends, and we hit it off, and I was always doing things in Korea that he loved. We destroyed his club one night in a great fight. Powell attributed the lessening of racial tensions and a general improvement in morale to Emerson. When they first arrived, Emerson and Powell had to deal with what they referred to as the Army misfits, those who could not be successful soldiers. Once the weeding out process was completed, Emerson began a program that, according to Powell, was extremely successful. You take disadvantaged people, black, Hispanic, it doesn't matter, and you try to bring them up by the bootstraps and give them self-confidence. We tried to give these people the best leg up we can. We had disciplined troops, we cared about their welfare, and we took care of them. Powell's year in Korea deeply affected him. He became much more aware about the drug problem that faced the nation. I came home from Korea having served the happiest year of my military career, in many ways because of what was and can never be again. Powell had been selected to attend the National War College for advanced military schooling. He was definitely being groomed for a position with a great deal of authority. He was the youngest in his class to make full colonel. He was appointed commander of Fort Campbell, Kentucky. Powell was in charge of 2,500 men and was leading 3 battalions. Colin Powell and his family were about to experience an exciting new future. He had begun to intermingle with many of the nation's most powerful men while a White House fellow, but now the grooming was complete and Colin Powell was forging ahead, taking his own place among the fraternity of power brokers.
We hope that you're enjoying this special tribute to the late Colin Powell. We want to say thank you so much to Beulah Walker, Yolanda Caldwell, Felicia Garland, Sharon MacArthur Parnell. Judge David Perkins, how are you this morning? Judge Bruce Morrow, good morning to you. Judge Deborah Ford, Judge Alicia Jones-Coleman, Bernard Davis, Ramona Hall, Mr. David Aikens hanging out with us this morning. We really appreciate you all being with us this morning. One of our listeners said she's enjoying the show. However, she says the commercials are too long. Well, let me just tell you, sweetheart, the commercials pay the bills, and that includes my salary and everybody else's, Marcus and all of us. So it's one of those things that we have to live with in life, and thank goodness for them. But I certainly appreciate you enjoying the show to the extent you're saying you don't want your show interrupted. Good morning, Miss Valerie Kendall. How are you this morning?
It's a Detroit State of Mind winning weekend. Here's your chance to see legendary hip-hop icon Nas live in concert November 20th at the historic Fox Theater.
Yo, Nas, you ready? Ready when you are, Prince.
Just listen to 105.9 KISS FM every hour from 9 a.m. till 7 p.m. for the keyword to text. Then text the word to 313-568-1059.
Your chance to win tickets to see Nas with special guest Wale.
What's up? This is Wale.
That's good enough.
EPMD.
Let's get up, let's get down.
And Detroit's own Royce the 5'9".
I provide the gun clap a round of applause after
We make you a winner in moments from the station putting you in a Detroit state of mind all weekend long.
105.9 KISS FM.
President Carter's national security advisor, Zygmunt Brzezinski, interviewed him. It had been decided that a military officer would be best suited to run the National Security Council's defense program staff. Initially, Powell declined. He was quite happy with his current assignment and had no expertise in that area. He returned to the base, but Brzezinski was persistent, and Powell turned down another position. This time, he received a third offer to be the special assistant to the Secretary of the Deputy Secretary of Defense. Powell accepted, and the family moved back to Virginia. He worked directly under John Kester. Powell got an insider's view of the complexities of international diplomacy. Iran was in the midst of great turmoil. The Shah was struggling to maintain his power. Powell, part of an American delegation, flew to Tehran in October of 1978. Within a short time after their trip, the Shah was overthrown on January 16, 1979. The military hosts that had given Powell and his party an extensive briefing had all been murdered. The United States had lost their vast financial investment in Iran. The United States Embassy in the city of Tehran was captured. American embassy staff were taken as hostages. Ayatollah Khomeini and his Revolutionary Council took control of the government. To say the least, their position was definitely anti-American. The crisis in Iran would end up causing President Carter to lose the election. Once back in the United States, Powell received the news that he had been promoted to Brigadier General. Secretary of Defense Harold Brown presided over the promotion ceremony. Colin Powell was presented with a framed quotation by Abraham Lincoln. In his memoirs, Powell recalls the event. It seems a telegraph operator at the War Department had informed the president one day that the Confederates had captured a bunch of horses and a Union brigadier general. The operator was surprised when Lincoln expressed more concern over the horses. Lincoln supposedly explained, "I can make a brigadier general in 5 minutes, but it's not as easy to replace 110 horses." The framed utterance by Lincoln has followed me to every office I have occupied since. The perfect cure for a swollen ego. Powell's next assignment was working for the Department of Energy. He had been loaned by the Department of Defense. This position was not his choice, and he didn't feel it was a good match for his training. It turned out to be a crucial assignment. because of the energy shortages in the United States due to the problems in Iran and by the nuclear accident at 3 Mile Island on the Susquehanna River in Pennsylvania. This crisis management training was tailor-made for what lay ahead with Desert Storm. On November 4th, 1980, Jimmy Carter was defeated by Ronald Reagan. The new president brought his own entourage. Caspar Weinberger was the new Secretary of Defense. After 5 months, General Powell became Assistant Division Commander of the 4th Infantry Division at Fort Carson, Colorado. 14 months later, he was assigned to Fort Leavenworth after an absence of 15 years. He was now Deputy Commanding General of the U.S. Army Combined Arms Combat Development Activity. It was here that new ideas were generated for weapons and transportation development. While at Leavenworth, Powell had become extremely interested in finding a way of acknowledging the participation of African Americans in the military. In particular, he wanted to pursue the contributions of the 10th Cavalry Buffalo Soldiers. Once he realized that there was no memorial to commemorate them, Powell became committed to preserving their memory. I became curious about the history of the Buffalo Soldiers. I started reading everything I could lay my hands on. What I learned filled me with pride at the feats these black men had achieved and with sadness at the injustices and neglect they had suffered. Blacks had fought in just about all of America's wars. They served to prove themselves the equal of white soldiers, which was precisely why some whites did not want blacks in uniform. A great source of inspiration for Powell was Benjamin O. Davis Sr., the first black general in the United States Army. Powell believed that it was General Davis who cleared the path for blacks to advance in the military. In 1932, while training at West Point, none of the other cadets would speak with him. His son, Benjamin O. Davis Jr., became a lieutenant general in the U.S. Air Force and the highest-ranking black in the military in 1965. Powell never took lightly their invaluable contributions and was committed to following the example the two men set.
It's the end for flat tires with this.
You know, one of the things we learn early in life, what high achievers learn, is that one has to be extremely careful about the conversation that one has in his own head. If you were with us from the beginning, you heard how the guidance counselor said that Powell's desires for his future were pretty moot, and it wasn't a good idea for him to go down that particular road. Somehow, and it was probably because of his upbringing with his parents, he knew who he was despite his failures as a student in class. We're going to try and get to most of this this morning, a significant part of it, but I hope that you'll take the time and do some more work on this. There have been some interesting comments about Colin Powell's life, his legacy. We won't get a chance to share the entire history with you, but certainly we will be able to share some more. So stay with us. There's more to come as we pay this tribute to this wonderful American. We will talk about the infrastructure bill and what it means for you. And also Mike Sanders is going to join us with his tribute to the Temptations. You're listening to The Mildred Gaddis Show.
The following is a paid political announcement.
Hello, this is Pastor Nicholas Hood III, former member of the Detroit City Council, to encourage you to cast one of your votes for an at-large position on the council for Mary Waters. I know Mary Waters, and I support her in her bid to be elected to the Detroit City Council. I've known her for over 40 years. Mary Waters served 6 years representing Detroit in the Michigan State House of Representatives. She is informed, a good listener, and has a heart for the people and city of of Detroit. Mary Waters is a breast cancer survivor and is sensitive to the challenges that women and men face. This is a critical stage in the redevelopment of Detroit, and we need good, clear-headed, strong people to represent the city on the council. Again, this is Pastor Nick Hood, and I ask you to cast one of your votes for at-large city council for Mary Waters.
Paid for by Friends of Mary Waters.
Marry me.
I'm Angie Starr, and from Detroit,
in my way, even fast, too slow. Been hurting every day without you. Yeah, you ought to know. Each minute only makes it clear how I need you so. And baby, past. Everything is gonna be alright. Hey honey, I can't wait to see you. Yeah, you ought to know it's gonna be the best it's been, girl. I love you so.
Unfair banking and unequal funding for schools have created a culture of separate and unequal. On November 2nd, Detroiters can right these historical wrongs by voting yes on Proposals S and R. Proposal S will amend the charter, allowing you, the citizens, to appropriate the funds to pay for programs that will rectify the historical wrongs done to Black Americans. There will be no tax increase on the people. Proposal R will define these programs. Proposal S will fund them if it passes. We deserve no less. Vote yes on S.
Paid for by the People's Voice.
Wake up, everybody, no more sleeping in bed.
WDMK FM and WDMK FM HD1 Detroit. This is the Mildred Gaddis Show on 105.9 KISS FM, a Beasley Media Group station.
It's a Detroit State of Mind winning weekend. Here's your chance to see legendary hip-hop icon Nas live in concert November 20th at the historic Fox Theater.
Here's this hour's keyword to text. Royce. R-O-Y-C-E. Royce.
Text the word to 313-568-1059. Good luck from 105.9 KISS FM.
Compelling talk you can count on. The Mildred Gaddis Show is back on 105.9 KISS.
We are most appreciative here on the Mildred Gaddis Show for your comments about this special tribute to General Colin Powell. Again, I can't express that enough. We're going to do a little bit more on this, and then we will have to wrap it up. But tell you what, got to say good morning to, I'm just loving what you guys are doing here on Mildred Gaddis Show Facebook Live. Beulah Walker, Yolanda Caldwell, Felicia Garland, Sharon MacArthur Parnell, Virginia Mundley. What's wrong with me this morning? Virginia Mundy. And let's get back to it.
It took 7 years for the groundbreaking ceremony, but on July 28, 1970, the dream was finally a reality. 3 years later, these brave soldiers finally got the monument they so justly deserved. In the summer of 1983, Caspar Weinberger contacted Powell to begin a term as a military assistant to the Secretary of Defense. By this time, Powell definitely was on the road to becoming the first black chief of staff. Powell had earned the reputation of not only being extremely competent and dedicated, but he also had excellent interpersonal skills, which enabled him to gain the respect of all individuals who worked with him. Powell's responsibilities revolved around making sure that White House personnel were informed of all military operations. Just 3 months after his appointment, 2 military crises happened just a few days apart. The killing of 241 Marines in a terrorist attack in Lebanon, and the military invasion of Grenada occurred. October of 1983 was definitely a difficult time for the U.S. military. A group of terrorists had bombed a U.S. Marine barrack in Beirut, Lebanon. American and British hostages were taken. American troops invaded Grenada to restore order after the coup by Maurice Bishop. His Marxist orientation aligned him with Cuba and the Soviet Union. The United States was concerned that Cuba and the Soviet Union were paying to have military airstrips built in Grenada. Bishop was assassinated and riots broke out. More than 1,000 American medical students attended the university at Grenada, and there was obvious concern for their safety. Although the invasion restored order, Powell felt that the troops needed additional training and had become very undisciplined. Powell continued on as the military assistant for 2 years and 10 months, when in 1986, he took over the U.S. Army 5th Corps, headquartered in Frankfurt, Germany. This was the culmination of his military career. He was in charge of 75,000 military personnel. In his autobiography, Powell recalls beginning his new assignment. I faced taking over V Corps with confidence tinged with a touch of anxiety. It was 10 years since I had been in command of the 2nd Brigade, 101st Airborne Division at Fort Campbell. In my previous field assignment, I had been an assistant division commander under Jack Hudacek, where I had not exactly emerged as George Patton, and I still felt uneasy about skipping a division command and going directly to a corps. I was determined to prove that I was an able commanding general and a Pentagon-bred political general. Colin Powell arrived in Germany in 1986. His son Michael was already stationed in Germany. He was a second lieutenant who had followed in his father's footsteps by completing ROTC and air assault school. Alma and their daughters Linda and Anne-Marie joined them shortly after Powell's arrival. It had been 25 years since Powell first went to Germany. He had completed every assignment since 1958 with the highest level of professionalism. It was no surprise that Colin had reached the apex of his military career at the age of 49. He referred to himself as the happiest general in the world. Unfortunately, it was short-lived. Powell was contacted by Frank Carlucci, who he had worked with when he was the military assistant to the Secretary of Defense. Carlucci had just been appointed National Security Advisor to President Reagan because of the forced resignation of Admiral Poindexter. The Reagan administration now was being tarnished for its involvement in secretly selling arms to Iran. President Reagan established a commission headed by Texas Senator John Tower to investigate the allegations that there was a plan in place to sell arms in exchange for releasing the hostages, and that the money received would be channeled to aid the Contras. Carlucci told Powell he was needed back in the States to help with reorganizing the National Security Council. Powell declined, but when he found out that Carlucci was working from direct orders of the president, he had no choice but to accept the position of Deputy Assistant to the President for National Security Affairs. It became official on December 18, 1986. By the end of the month, Colin and Alma Powell and their daughters were back in the States. A press conference was called in January, and although Powell was disappointed to give up the coveted position, he told the press, "I'm a serviceman, a soldier, and it looked like my service might be of greater use here." On February 26th, the Tower Commission released its findings, and the role of the National Security Council was redefined. President Reagan had to go before the American public and set the record straight. Unfortunately, the accusations were correct, and the administration was committed to correcting their mistakes.
You know, General Colin Powell went on to become the first black Secretary of State. He served in that role from 2001 to 2005. And history is very, very clear. Whenever there were challenges in his career, professionally, especially when he was Secretary of State and prior to that, he always handled the crisis with dignity and grace. He took ownership of the failures. Of course, there was tremendous, and there should have been, criticism about the U.S. invading Iraq based upon the intelligence that was given that those weapons were there, where there were no weapons of mass destruction. He took the hit for that, as he should have. But when you look at, and for those of you who were able to see him at a press conference, every time he was asked the question, he handled it with such dignity and grace. There was never any stuttering. There was never any attitude. He did what leaders should do, what quality leaders should do.
Personal tragedy struck the Powell family on June 27th, when they were notified that their son Michael had been seriously injured in a Jeep accident. He had suffered a broken pelvis and internal injuries. Michael was transferred to Walter Reed Army Hospital in Washington, D.C., and after many painstaking operations, Michael recovered. In his new position, Powell walked the diplomatic tightrope. He was responsible for briefing Congress on national security matters and kept White House personnel aware of specific policy that could impact the nation's security. He was also responsible for participating in the planning of the diplomatic summits between President Reagan and Soviet President Mikhail Gorbachev. Colin Powell continued in this position until the end of the Reagan administration. He received the Distinguished Service Award in recognition for his work. In 1989, Powell was promoted to 4-star general. His new assignment was the Forces Command at Fort McPherson, Georgia. There were 250,000 active duty troops and another 250,000 reservists. This was where almost 500,000 National Guard soldiers were trained. Once again, Powell was elated to be back in the active army. But as before, it was short-lived. Within a few months, Powell was to serve as the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. Secretary of Defense Dick Cheney had visited him in Georgia to get a first-hand impression of Colin Powell. 4 months into his new command, Powell received a phone call from President Bush. Secretary Cheney had given Powell a glowing recommendation, and Bush offered him the chairmanship. The Powells were back on the move, returning to the now familiar nation's capital. Powell's job description was to command the troops on behalf of the President of the United States. 3 times a week, he met with the Chiefs of Staff of the Army, Air Force, Chief of Naval Operations, and the Commandant of the Marine Corps. Within days of beginning his new job, Powell was in the midst of his first military crisis. On December 20th, 1989, over 18,000 American troops invaded the small country of Panama. Operation Just Cause. their corrupt dictator Manuel Noriega was relieved of his duties. He was being sought on drug trafficking charges in the United States. Noriega turned up 4 days later at the residence of the papal nuncio in Panama City. Noriega underestimated the determination of the United States to remove him. After 10 days, Noriega was transferred to an American jail to wait for his trial. This was Powell's test under fire. Little did he know that this would be the prelude to the Persian Gulf War. Powell knew of the difficulties between Iraq and Kuwait for some time. Iraq had accumulated massive debts from its war with Iran that ended in 1988. To make matters worse, Saddam Hussein refused to give up any portion of his million-man army. Saddam believed that Kuwait and the United Arab Emirates were also responsible for the lowering of oil prices by the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries, known as OPEC, which meant cutting into Iraq's profits. On August 1st, 1990, Powell was notified that the Iraqi army went across the border of Kuwait. Norman Schwarzkopf was the commander-in-chief for the Central Command known as CENTCOM for the Middle East and Southwest Asia. Their headquarters was at MacDill Air Force Base in Florida. Powell had brought him to Washington to be briefed on Saddam's actions. In his memoirs, Powell reflected on his initial handling of Saddam. By now, I regretted our earlier political and military inaction, although it was not clear that Hussein would be deterred by token moves. After Schwarzkopf's briefing as Secretary Cheney and I were leaving the building, I said, "Dick, this is serious. We can't ignore what's going on. I think the president should get off a tough message to Saddam today. Even call him, but try to scare him off." Dick was as concerned as I was and began touching bases at the NSC and state to prepare a protest. It was too late. Before we could fire a diplomatic warning shot, 80,000 of Saddam's Republic Guards were across the border rolling toward Kuwait City. By early September, Schwarzkopf was now headquartered in the Ministry of Defense building in the country's capital at Riyadh. Powell went to see firsthand what progress was being made in preparing for war. Powell, Schwarzkopf, and their advisors kept working on an implementation plan. Schwarzkopf was emphatic that he needed additional troops. Powell retold the events. The next morning, we met again at Schwarzkopf's headquarters to flesh out our ideas from the night before. Norm repeated his request for a 2-division corps from Europe. I agreed and said we would add a 3rd division. I beefed up his request for additional fighter squadrons. Aircraft carriers? Let's send 6. We had paid for this stuff. Why not use it? What were we saving it for? We had learned a lesson in Panama. Go in big and end it quickly. We could not put the United States through another Vietnam. We could be so lavish with resources because the world had changed. We could now afford to pull divisions out of Germany that had been there for the past 40 years to stop a Soviet offensive that was no longer coming. At last, the men and their technology arrived. They were ready. Operation Desert Storm was underway. Powell and Dick Cheney went to Riyadh on December 19th for one last first-hand look to assure that everything was as planned. Powell told of the first sleepless night of the war.
And as history would have it, Colin Powell went on, of course, to do much more. And one of the interesting things he did was he broke ranks with the Republicans in endorsing President Barack Obama. He also was bold enough to speak out against Donald Trump, which was it infuriated Donald Trump, but there were other Republicans, of course, George W. Bush and others who broke ranks with the Republican Party, not necessarily with the Republican Party, but with its president. And I encourage you to take time to really go and listen to this story, read this story. It's a phenomenal story. For those of you who have children and grandchildren, it is a great American story. As I was listening to this the other day, I was reminded of Robert Frost's poem, The Road Not Taken. Two roads diverged in a yellow wood, and sorry I could not travel both, and be one traveler. Long I stood and looked down one as far as I could to where it bent in the undergrowth. Then took the other, as just as fair, and having perhaps the better claim, because it was grassy and wanted wear, though as far that passing had warned them really about the same. And both that morning equally lay in leaves no step had trodden black. Oh, I kept the first for another day, yet knowing how way leads on to way. I doubted if I should ever come back. I shall be telling this with a sigh. Somewhere ages and ages hint. Two roads diverged in a wood, and I took the one less traveled by, and that has made all the difference.
To dream the impossible dream, to fight the unbeatable foe, to bear with unbearable sorrow, and to run where the brave dare not go, and to right the unrightable wrong, and to love pure and chaste from afar, to try when your arms are too weary to reach the unreachable star. This is my quest to follow that star. Ooh, no matter how hopeless, no matter how far, to fight for the right without question or pause, to be willing to march into hell for that heavenly cause. And I know if I'll only be true to this glorious quest, that my heart will lie peaceful and calm when I'm laid to my rest, and the world will be better for this. Hey, that one man, scorned and covered with scars, still strong with his last ounce of courage to reach the unreachable, the unreachable, the unreachable star.
General Colin Powell, dead at age 84. JoJo Sanford on Facebook Live says that what an awesome, great, blessed Kingsman, Colin Powell. What a lifetime. Thanks for sharing the information. And Wesley Bro sent the message, a race well run. Rest on General Colin Powell. I salute you. I just love that. A race well run. You know, every time we lose somebody, I don't know about you, but whether they're friends, whether they're people you've known, you've had somehow they've touched your life, you've touched their lives. I don't know about you, but, you know, I find myself asking myself, am I honoring my assignment? That thing that I was supposed to do when I arrived on the planet. You know, what have I done with it? You know, what have I done with it? And there are people who get it, and they're so clear on it. I love our Nigerian brothers and sisters. They don't play. Our Jamaican brothers and sisters, they come to this country. They get it. They understand that this is a great country. Despite all the challenges, it's a great, and instead of complaining, they get busy. They get real busy. I was in New York some years ago with my friend. I was a guest of Jane Newcomb. We were there for a dinner honoring Michael Jordan. And I cannot tell you what street. I don't know if it was the Sheraton. I can't remember what the hotel was. And so we were going into the hotel, and there was the General Colin Powell. And at that time, we carried tape recorders in our hands, in our purses, and our mics. And I stopped him. He didn't have any bodyguards or anybody else. I introduced myself, and I asked him if I could interview him for a few minutes. And he said yes, to my amazement. And I was able to interview Colin Powell. And I thought, what an awesome individual, because people are people, and once people get to a place, some people where everybody knows their name, they tend to be a tad bit different. But he was such a gracious individual. I was just elated at the fact that he gave me that time for an interview. So again, let's not stop telling the Colin Powell story. And I've got a nasty little this social media thing, you all know how I feel about the foolishness on it. And there was this black woman, and she was just lambasting him for being a Republican. She sounded like the ignorance that Donald Trump espoused in making a public statement about General Colin Powell. You know, we've got to stop majoring in minors and get busy, because it's later than we think. It is later than we think. Thanks for listening. Coming up next, we're going to talk about what that new infrastructure package has to do with you. I'm Mildred Gaddis.
The following is a paid political announcement.
It's time to repair. For too long, Black people have had the proverbial knee on our necks in America. The effects of slavery, Jim Crow, lynchings, and systematic racism have denied us the American dream. In Detroit, redlining, unfair banking, and unequal funding for schools have created a culture of separate and unequal. On November 2nd, Detroiters can right these historical wrongs by voting yes on Proposals S and R. Proposal S will amend the charter, allowing you, the citizens, to appropriate the funds to pay for programs that will rectify the historical wrongs done to Black Americans. There will be no tax increase on the people. Proposal R will define these programs. Proposal S will fund them if it passes. We deserve no less. Vote yes on S.
Paid for by the People's Voice.
Wake up, everybody, no more sleeping in bed.
If you have both Medicare and Medicaid, here's some great news. You might qualify for United Healthcare Dual Complete. With this plan, you can get up to $120 a month to cover some basic needs, over-the-counter products or healthy foods. So if you have Medicare and Medicaid, call 1-844-827-7402. That's 1-844-827-7402. Benefits and features vary by plan or area. Limitations and exclusions apply, depending on your level of Medicaid eligibility. Costs may vary. OTC and healthy food benefits have expiration time frames. Call the plan or refer to your evidence of coverage, EOC, for more information.
Priorities shift from chasing time.
Come on, kids, let's go.
To chasing sunsets. From family trips to backyard adventures. At Priority Health, we'll always be ready to shift with you, from complicated policies to ones written by humans, from a member number to a first name basis.
Hi, Jan.
Because your priorities have shifted. Maybe it's time your health insurance company did too. Find your plan at priorityhealth.com.
Marry me.
I'm Angie Starr, and from Detroit's legendary Clark family, recording artist Larry Clark debuts his Will You Marry Me series.
Compelling talk you can count on. The Mildred Gaddis Show is back on 105.9 KISS.
There's still no deal, but Democrats in the nation's capital are narrowing their differences over President Biden's massive social spending bill. CBS's Christina Ruffini is at the White House with the very latest. Christina.
Good evening, Jamie. The president spent the afternoon at his granddaughter's field hockey game, but he spent the week trying to remind disagreeing Democrats they're on the same team.
You got to work things out.
President Biden is encouraging Democratic lawmakers to agree on a framework for the Build Back Better plan sooner rather than later.
If it takes an extra week, to me, that's worth it.
But Pramila Jayapal, chair of the House Progressive Caucus, says the details are still being worked out.
We are trying to get to a place where everybody can agree to something that is still transformative.
The original $3.5 trillion bill was trimmed to $2 trillion in order to appease Senate Democrats Joe Manchin and Kyrsten Sinema, who opposed the initial price tag.
We will get nothing if we do not have 50 votes.
The White House has been encouraging the two wings of the party to compromise.
Compromise is not a dirty word.
One thing both teams seem to agree on, funding for universal pre-kindergarten. But other measures like free community college are out. Paid family leave gets trimmed from 12 weeks to 4, and the president said this week a proposal to expand Medicare to cover vision and dental seems unlikely.
I'm prepared to do the things that can get done now that can begin to change the lives of ordinary Americans, to give them a fighting chance.
Now, once they decide what goes in the bill, they still have to decide how to pay for it. One option would be to increase taxes on billionaires, but it's unclear if all 50 Democratic senators would agree. And remember, Jamie, they can't afford to lose a single vote.
Wow, Christina.
Welcome back to the Mildred Gaddis Show. Mr. Ellis Liddell, president of ELE Wealth Management, on the line this morning to help us understand what is all of this about and what does it mean for us. Good morning, Mr. Liddell. How are you?
Good morning. Great segment, by the way, on Colin Powell.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Where are we going here? What's going on and why should we care?
Well, let me just say this here. This will be the best spending package from every American citizen. If I'm a small business owner or a large business owner, I'm looking at this package saying, what can I do to help? But at the same time, what can I do to help America recover from this COVID reset? And you're looking at it saying there are roads in there are bridges in there, there's families in there, there's a package in there to prevent poverty. So they've got a lot in this bill, but keep in mind, we've never spent this much money on America's infrastructure before. So, and it's needed. I mean, when you drive down the street, you see streets need to be repaired. Our governor ran on many policies, but the key one that everybody remembers was fix the roads, right?
Yeah, those D roads.
The several that she ran on that was the one that everybody echoed and recalled. And that whole bridges. I mean, we have a bridge in the United States that costs $1 billion to repair. So we're talking about, even though they set aside $110 billion for roads and bridges, it's still just a Band-Aid on a bigger problem because they're going to need to fund some more money for all these bridges and roads that are falling apart. But more importantly, the infrastructure of America. Let me break it down so people understand. It's like in your household, you had two people who earned money. And all of a sudden, one of the people, for whatever reason, no longer bring in any income. How do you run your household? That's what we are. And the debt ceiling, even though we don't talk about that as much, the debt ceiling, the ability for the United States to pay their own bills, the debt ceiling is important. That can got kicked down the road to December 3rd. They have to vote to increase our ability to borrow money. I'm talking about from a state perspective. So imagine that you're a small business owner, and you just need to borrow some money to just make ends meet until you get your next big check. Well, that's the United States at this time. They have so much going on that unless they increase the debt ceiling, they can't borrow money to make their bill payment.
Now, there's a lot in it, and if you're a layperson, when this thing first showed up, you were asking to yourself, has the president taken leave of his senses? We heard how many trillions the Biden administration was talking about. So how much have they shaved this thing down?
From $3 trillion down to $1 trillion. They just want to get something passed. Now, the states are the biggest beneficiaries of this passing, by the way. Once it's passed, this money goes from the federal government to the states. So each state's going to have, their funds went very low during COVID. This is going to build back up their funds, and the state will have some discretion on how this money is spent within their state. So he really tried to cater to everybody's needs. He's just having trouble in his own party, but he did cater to everybody's needs.
You know what? The Democrats are self-destructing. It's just, a friend of mine said to me, We'll all of us will long be gone before there be a Democrat elected president again in this country. We've seen both parties fight before, and we've seen them have infighting. But there's some stuff going on within the Democratic Party that really, really looks bad. Either they're off kilter or the president is off kilter, but it doesn't look good at all for the team.
Well, here's the thing. Most people don't, keep in mind, most politicians go to Washington. They're already somebody in their own state, right? Then now you want to become somebody on the national level. Well, how come do it bringing this bill together. Don't do it separating. But look how many people have become famous for just being a separatist. They just separate concepts, separate ideas.
Oh, yes, and that's what's happened. That is, you're right. That is certainly what's happened.
Yeah, deliver some money to your state. That's how you become popular. Take care of your citizens. That's how you become popular. But these guys want to become popular for just standing against whatever President Biden wants to do. They want to stand on the other side of the aisle.
So that there's a camera and a microphone showing up. You're absolutely right. Now, for our listeners, let's separate this thing, because for some people it can be, and is confusing. And what I'm speaking of here is stimulus and infrastructure. You know, do the stimulus monies become a part of this infrastructure piece? Generally, when you talk about infrastructure, people think of freeways and roads and all of those kinds of things. What's the difference here?
Okay, so there are some policies, there are some benefits here that are tied to it that is tied to stimulus. And when I say stimulus, I'm talking about anything that's going to encourage you, whether it's a grant. Most of us look at it as free money. If it's free money, you know, that's how most people look at it. There was supposed to be another stimulus check coming. It's tied to this bill. So you've got the daycare money that's tied to this bill. You've got the money for single or married families where they get the extra check on a monthly basis tied to this bill. So there's a number of things that are tied to it that once it passes, everybody will benefit. Now, there's a credit that families are going to start receiving already, but the question is, will they receive that credit for having children for 4 years, or will it just be a year? If this bill passes in the original form, it was going to go for 4 years, 48 months. You would get a check to help make sure your children don't fall into poverty.
Now,
whereas now they're looking at 1 year.
When you told me that, I could not believe it. You know, there's an old saying, yesterday's liberal is today's conservative. And when I heard that, it bothered me. And I'll tell you why it bothered me. It bothered me. My mind went back to yesteryear when our communities were demonized for the poverty they found themselves in. And, you know, they talked about the welfare queen and all of this other foolishness. And there were people out there who were taking advantage of the system. I need you to help me understand what's going on here.
Well, that's part of why the fighting is occurring. Some people look at it and say, you know, all that's going to do is encourage people to have children just to live on the system. And that's the reason why they wanted to cut it down from 48 months down to 1 year, is to say, well, if somebody goes out and have a baby just to get this $250 or $300 for 1 year, they're crazy. So they think that that's going to be enough to discourage what you're talking about, that whole poverty piece that we looked at, you know, growing up. The other piece I should say, though, is that historically black colleges and universities will also get funding from this, too, to help them out. Many of them need it. And then they also, the Pell Grant Program. Remember when you were in college, the Pell Grant Program was enough money to pay for college?
Yes, sir.
Whereas today it pays for a good semester or two. So they want to expand the Pell Grant Program and make it possible for people to afford college. You know, I realize that President Biden wanted colleges to be free. A lot of people were against that. Because
that community college, the community colleges, he wanted the community college tuition to be abolished.
Right. And keep in mind, a number of people want there to be a permanent underclass in America. There are people who want there to be a permanent underclass because they feel like, you know, not everybody should be equal to them. So with that in mind, at least if you can get 2 years of college, it's going to put you in a better position to be more employable.
Yes, sir, it is. And I just want to go back to one thing because I want to share this with the listeners. Now, these payments for the children that have been debated, parents will get payments up to $300 per child for a child younger than 6, and $250 for children ages up to $250, ages 6 to 17. Now, is that per child?
Yes, right now there's a debate on that, whether they're going to leave it per child or not, because that would encourage large families. Not encourage, but large families will get more money. And keep in mind, the whole idea is not to encourage people to have a child just to get money.
Okay. All right.
That's one of the things they're fighting over. Is it going to be per child, or is it just going to be one single child? That's still in debate.
When we go to break, we got to go to break. When I come back, I want to talk to you about something that concerns me, and that is there are a lot of people who are still staying home and not returning to work because they're receiving monies. And it appears that some of these jobs are being eliminated. I watched this restaurant in New York where a robot would go to the table, take the order. That robot would come back with the orders at that table. The robot would bring the bill. There was once the chef prepared the meal and put it to go to the right table, the robot is programmed as to what table to take it to. It was fascinating. And the owner of the restaurant said, Ellis Liddell, it only cost him $350 a month to rent that, not a week, $350 a month to rent that robot. So anyway, think about that.
We will.
Let's talk about that. We're going to go to break and come back. You're listening to The Mildred Gaddis Show.
Detroit. Mildred Gaddis wants to hear from you. Let your voice be heard on The Mildred Gaddis Show.
Well, I've been here 30 plus years. There's always been a mayoral debate.
We need one. The streets are talking, and we want you to be a part of the conversation. Sundays from 8 till 10 a.m. with the queen of Detroit Talk Radio, Mildred Gaddis.
I'm Mildred Gaddis, and I'll see you on the radio.
Only on 105.9 KISS FM.
Detroit seniors, get a $50 reduction on your monthly internet service. AARP has teamed with the city, Henry Ford Health Systems, churches, Detroit Area Agency on Aging, and others. 5,000 applications are available. Reconnect after the pandemic with medical providers, family, and community. Apply online at www.getemergencybroadband.org or call 313-214-7618.
The holidays are doubly important this year, so make your celebrations doubly special. At Kroger, we've got a huge selection of high-quality meats on top of fresh, natural produce, like fresh, never-frozen prime-grade beef and our Simple Truth organic Brussels sprouts, or delicious king crab legs with our private selection gourmet potatoes. Whew, had to say that doubly fast. Kroger, fresh for everyone.
We're hiring for immediate openings with next-day pay, benefits, and great perks. Apply today at jobs.kroger.com.
At Summit Place Kia, our goal is to make your entire experience fun, fast, and easy. We'll show you the same price as a friend or family member right up front, and we'll give you exactly what your trade-in is worth, down to the penny. Come see me, Tanya Lalonde, today to Summit Place Kia in Clinton Township and Summit Place Kia in Auburn Hills.
Whether you're at home or on the go, listen to 105.9 KISS FM on Odyssey. On your smartphone, Roku, LG Smart TV, Waze, and more. Check out Detroit's smooth R&B and old school on Odyssey. AUDACY.
We hear you, Victor. Life's been a long ride, and you are looking ahead for more. And at Zing Health, we will help you make it happen with more dental, more vision, and more medical coverage at no additional costs. Don't wait to start optimizing your health with great benefits. Call Zing Health today at 1-833-946-4487 to learn more, or visit us at zinghealth.me. Zing Health is a Medicare Advantage HMO plan with a Medicare contract. Enrollment in the plan depends on contract renewal. Zing Health complies with applicable federal civil rights laws and does not discriminate on the basis of race, color, national origin, age, disability, or sex.
4,000 Detroit residents have reduced or eliminated their property taxes through the Detroit Tax Relief Fund, and you could be next. If you're behind on your property taxes, call 313-244-0274 for help. Our experts are standing by to help you eliminate your property tax debt and apply for home repair programs. Now is the time to take action. Sponsored by the Rocket Community Fund and the Gilbert Family Foundation.
With just one spray of Microban 24, your hard surfaces are sanitized for up to 24 hours. Touch after touch after touch.
So 6 hours from now?
Still sanitized.
12 hours?
Yep.
18 hours.
We're really doing this.
24 hours.
When used as directed, one spray of Microban keeps killing 99.9% of bacteria touch after touch for, up to 24 hours.
Wow.
Microban 24. The sanitizer 4 out of 5 doctors would use in their own homes. So why aren't you?
Gain presents a tale of longing and long-lasting scent. Dear love of my life, we were on the 12B bus when I caught a whiff. A scent so fresh, so life-changing, I had to find its source. I didn't know if you were the woman in the pink freshly washed cardigan or the retired mailman next to me, but I knew one of you was my soulmate. Ah, the scent of Gain Flings. Add Gain scent beads for an even longer lasting scent.
Introducing the latest innovation in water technology. The new Nebbia by Moen Quattro Showerhead offers 4 unique experiences to choose from, designed to soothe, clarify, relieve, and cleanse. An indulgent shower experience engineered to use up to 50% less water. Water designs our life. Who designs for water? Visit Moen.com to learn more.
Compelling talk you can count on. The Mildred Gaddis Show is back on 105.9 KISS.
Mr. Ellis Liddell, our guest here on the Mildred Gaddis Show, and the clock is racing. Beulah, you're on the air with your question or comment. Hi.
Hey, good morning, Auntie. Good morning, Mr. Liddell. My name is Beulah Walker, and I'm a skilled tradesman. And I want to express my support for the President Biden's infrastructure spending bill. I just want to bring up the apprenticeship programs that are heavily here in the Midwest, especially city Detroit, to where I'm fruit of Council President Brenda Jones' meetings that she has every Wednesday. And I came up through that at the age of 42, and I'm 47.
Beulah, let me just tell you this, sweetie. We're almost out of time. So do you have a question for Mr. Liddell?
Well, I just have a statement. I just want him to know that the infrastructure program includes apprenticeship programs where it's free. All you have to do is do your hours and you become a journeyman. But I want to express that it costs you nothing to become a tradesman.
And Beulah, what I'd like for you to do certainly is get that information to us, and we'll be happy to announce it. Mr. Liddell, what's going to happen with these jobs?
It's this. Millennials have figured out another way to make money. That's part of why they're not in the job market so much. And they're going to be, and seniors are afraid of COVID, so they're not in the job market. So that's why we have the shortage that we're having. But robots, you said it, robotics is going to change the way we look at working.
Wow. Now let's talk about this seminar. We had a lot of people have been calling and leaving questions. So you're going to do Household Finance 101? Is that what we're doing on the Zoom?
We're going to do that on the Zoom on November the 6th, and it's time for a reset as we look at our finances in America. Coupled with the tax bill that's also tied to all this, there's a lot that people need to know in terms of household finance.
So resetting your household, I like the resetting your finance, and that includes the household, right?
Exactly.
As we move forward in this 21st century. And they can register. It's a free seminar. You can register at www.elewealth.com, or you can call 248-356-6555. Let me give that to you again, ladies and gentlemen. That is, you can go to elewealth.com. And the number you can call is 248-356-6555, 248-356-6555, www.elewealth.com. Mr. Liddell?
Yeah, I just want to say Beulah made a great point. Look at apprenticeships. You have to be skilled going forward. There's no longer just getting by. No, you must have a skill set to go forward into the next century.
Okay, folks, that is November 6th. You can go online and register, or you can call 248-356-6555. And we're going to talk about resetting your finances. I love that. Your household finances, all your finances. Mr. Ellis Liddell, president of ELE Wealth Management, thank you so much. We appreciate it.
Thank you. Have a great one.
Bye-bye. I told you all earlier this morning we would be talking to a local artist. He is Mr. Mike Sanders. And how are you this morning?
Good morning, Ms. Gaddis, and I want to thank you for having me. I also want to thank you for uplifting Detroit and for that Colin Powell tribute. It was awesome.
I'm so glad you listened to that. Listen, you're the man right now. What happened to that Detroit song? I loved that song that I heard, several years ago, 2 to 3 years ago?
Oh, yeah, I remember that. I mean, I put a lot of love into that song. We just, couldn't get it off. But, it's still new to those who haven't heard it.
Okay, we'll play it next Sunday so Detroiters can hear it. Now, I want to talk about this latest tribute that you did with about the Temptations. Tell us why you did this one.
Well, as a child, I will never forget on Sundays rushing home after being in church all day and watching Ed Sullivan. And the first time I saw the Temptations, I've been a fan, all my life. They were, to see us, Detroit, on the big stage, it was just so impressive. And that music and the Temptations have been a part of my life, all my life.
Well, the folks at, is it Soundtracks? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I understand that they're saying that this song is a hit with their readers, over 2,000 likes on Facebook, and it's being shared by them all over social media. So that's got to make you feel good. Before I play it, however, I see that Charlie Williams is a producer. Is that Charlie as in the tycoon Charlie Williams that we all in Detroit know?
That's Mr. Charlie Everything Williams. and I'm going to tell you how it came about. I mean, we're Temptations fans. We're best buddies, but we're Temptations fans.
Okay.
So when I put this together, and it's like a Picasso. I, brought a lot of different acts and the local acts to sing it. But, Charlie came along and added that, structure and organization in the song. And he has a very good ear for music. And it was like, Mike, not this, Mike, add this. And he actually produced the song. And he's probably the kind of guy to do anything if he put his mind to it.
You know what? And I want Detroiters to know, this is the Charlie Williams. I was reading about in Crane's Detroit Business not very long ago, the horse racing Charlie Williams, and now he's producing songs. I'll tell you. Well, I'll tell you what. I want to go on and share it with our listeners here, and I want you to stay on the line. Okay.
Okay.
Remember those sweet love songs? Let me take you back. You could hear them singing harmony under the street lights, a cappella symphony, working on routines, step into the beat, perfect timing, and melody so sweet, voices blending, smooth as silk. Song sung about love and pain, sunshine, blue skies, and rain. You should have seen them when they stepped upon the stage. You know the walk they did started a brand new craze. Melvin was blowing low and deep, and it was soaring high and sweet. And when David got to his part, fell down on his knees and broke the young girl's heart, he sung about yesterday, my girl, or that guy who lost his baby, and he wasn't too proud to beg or cry.
my goodness. Mr. Sanders.
Yes, ma'am.
That's a great song.
Thank you so much.
I see why you got all those likes on Facebook. Now, I'm going to have to look at Charlie differently now. I'm going to have to look at him a whole lot different. This is wonderful music, and this is certainly Detroit music. Who was that? Somebody, who was that said on Facebook Live? Brenda Nimmock said that it was nice ballroom song, she says. Now, how do our listeners find this tribute to the Temptations?
Well, I mean, it's on all the platforms to purchase music, YouTube, and we're encouraged by the stream. And I'm looking at a chart now where the song is being streamed in France, Lithuania, Switzerland, Czech Republic, Spain, Norway, Italy, just all over the world. Just think that's something that we've created by Detroiters. It's for the world, and the Motown music is for the world.
What was it? Let me ask you this quickly, because we're running against the clock. What was it? What was so special about David Ruffin?
So, I don't even know. I think it was just his way he performed, how articulate he was. And, a lot of people take the latter half of their life and judge a person by that. But, the first half of his life, he sung his heart out for the people. And you could understand where he was just from the tenor in his voice. And, artists go through a lot, but they don't sing for themselves. They sing for us to be the soundtrack of our lives. And it seemed like no matter what song he sung during the 60s and 70s, it was a point in my life that I could listen to that song and feel somebody was sharing that experience with me, whether it was love or breakup or whatever it was. He was just a special voice. And a God-given voice, and he used it to make people happy.
Well, I want to congratulate you on this song, and thank you for allowing me to share it on my show with Detroiters. I know they are loving it. We've got some positive feedback here. I want to say good morning to Valerie Kendall, Sheila Johnson, and Jeff. Thank you for listening. And Mike Sanders, congratulations. Keep doing this great stuff. All right.
Thank you. And you tell them they can start posting their favorite Temptations routines on TikTok or Facebook. Let them dance. Let them dance to the music.
All right, my friend. Thank you so much. And tell Charlie Williams I said congratulations.
I will.
Okay, bye-bye.
Singing harmony under the street lights. Acapella symphony. Working on routines, step into the beat, perfect timing.
I'm Mildred Gaddis, and I'll see you on the radio.
It's a Detroit State of Mind winning weekend. Here's your chance to see legendary hip-hop icon Nas live in concert November 20th at the historic Fox Theater.
Yo, Nas, you ready?
One more chance.